So I want to talk about the theory, the music theory, and then I have different parts of it. Um, yeah, I want to talk about scales. I want to talk about rhythm pattern, which is actually very important for guitar players, especially for your right hand. And yeah, also the very basics of the music notation, key signature, time signature, yeah, and all that stuff. So first of all, let's talk about the key signature. It's a set of flats, sharps, or really natural symbols, which are placed at the beginning of a piece of music, directly behind or next to the clef in the stuff. As it said in the name, it shows the key, and the flats and sharps are actually limited to a maximum of 7 symbols per key. So there aren't more than 7 sharps or flats in one key. And another important thing is that you can't, that the flats can't be mixed up with the sharps in one key. So there are only keys with sharps in it and only keys with flats in it. And then you have to watch out that you can't mix them up. Another thing is, so furthermore, they apply through to the end of the piece, or up to the next key signature, of course. The key signature is showing flats or sharps on both octaves for notes with which fall within the stuff or within the clef. So, for example, when you got for example, the first sharp, so the key when there's only one sharp, it's an F sharp, and this sharp at the key signature at the beginning of the bar line, it does not only count for the F sharp which is actually on the first line of the stuff. It also counts for the F sharp which is one octave under it. So then you have to watch out while you're reading the stuff or the bar line, that you don't forget the F sharp one octave under it. Another hint for better reading, or to have one look at the key signature, and you in 2 seconds you know the key. I got 2 hints for that. On the one hand, for the key signature with flats, the key signature is the second to last. So when you go to the last flat and then go one back, you already got your root note and you already got your key. So that's so easy. Except of the A, of course, because there's only one flat, and that's a bit more difficult. For key signature with sharps, the key signature's note name, a semitone above you got your root note. So then when you go to the last sharp that you have, so for example, when we go again back to the first sharp, it's an F sharp, and then in a half step or a semitone above, you got your root note. So you know that the key is in G. The key is in G, and that's because the natural occurring half steps of a major scale are between the 7th and the 8th scale degree, actually, and we call that the leading tone. All music is essentially made up of 2 elements. You got rhythm and melody. So while some styles or some individual pieces may emphasize one of these elements, typically both exist. While there is music which is composed using rhythm only, music which only uses melodies without rhythm is difficult to find. And that's because music needs rhythm, so it can be organized in phrases, bars, sections, and even movements. Rhythm is made up of varying durations of time, and in music, each of these durations can be notated using different note values. So this is an important point which I want to talk about later on. And another important thing is the time signature. So the time signature is used at the beginning of a piece of music to show how many beats are in a bar actually, and what type of notes these beats are. So rhythm is basically the result of a different note values to the corresponding time signature. So let's move on to the time signature. The time signatures define the amount and type of notes that each measure or bar contains. So for example, when you got a measure in a 4/4 time, it contains 4 quarter notes in it. And another example is when you got a measure in 3/4 time, then it contains 3 quarter notes in it, and so on. You can build your time signature as you would like, so you don't have to use as I'm doing it, or as I did it before with the quarter notes. You can also use 8th or 16th notes. So for example, when you can have a measure in 6/8 time, and that contains 6/8 notes in one measure. Where you can find the time signature is, you can find it also at the beginning of your piece of music, so right next to or behind the clef and the key that I actually mentioned before. And now we come to another important thing, which is connected to the time signature, the note values, which are very important, and because they shows the duration of a note, or if it is a rest, it indicates a silence of an equivalent duration. So we got several notes in our notes system, in our notation system, and I want to focus on, as I think, the important notes and the important note values of a guitar player and modern music actually. So I want to start with the whole note. So we got it over here, the whole note, and the whole note contains a note head, so it's only a note head, and after that it means that when you got a 4/4 time in a measure, it can be only a whole note in it. So then the bar is full. Then you have to move on to the next bar or the next measure. After that we got a half note, so it's under it, and you can see that the half note actually got a note head too, but you have to add a stem on it, so it's with a stem. We call the line up, we call that a stem. After that there's a quarter note, and the quarter note looks basically the same as the half note, but the note head is filled up and not empty as it is with the half note. After that there are 8th, 16th and 32nd notes, which are basically all look like the quarter notes, but got a little flag on it, so you can see it over here. Got a little flag on it, and on the 8th note this is 1 flag, on the 16th note 2, and on the 32nd 3 flags, and so on up to the 128th note. In addition to that is to say that if there are 2 or more of the 8th or faster notes, they are being together in groups, so they're stemmed, the flags are being together, so there's only one line. You can see it over here, and there's only one line that link the notes together. And that's it so far. I got one point to add, that I got one dot to add. That's why, because you can add a dot to note, and this dot does not mean that it is augmented or diminished or something like that. It means that with the sharps or the flats, how you can raise or lower the tones. Here is it about the note values. So the dot means that you add the next briefer note value to the actually note duration. So to make the note 1.5 times longer than its original duration. So for example, when you got a quarter note and add a dot to it, the duration of this note, the quarter note and the dot, is a quarter note and an 8th note. So you make the quarter note longer, actually 1/8 longer. So that is 1.5 longer than the original duration. And I think that's it to the time signature and note values. The next part I want to talk about are the note intervals. You talk about note intervals when you're playing more than one note on the instrument at the same time. So, for example, you're playing a note and it's carrying on, and you want to play some more notes on top of that. So, whenever we've got more than one note, there's called intervals. You can have intervals above or below the first note that you're playing, or actually intervals mixed in a chord or something like that. So basically, note intervals are the distance between two notes. On the one hand, we've got half steps, and on the other hand, we've got whole steps. Those are very basics of every scale, and the following intervals I want to explain. A half step is often linked with sharps or flats because the natural tones without flats or sharps are in most cases a whole step away. So basically, for example, from C to D, it's a whole step. But there are two exceptions. Between B and C and E and F are two natural occurring half steps, and they actually aren't related to any flats or sharps. So for better understanding, I will explain the following intervals only with half steps, or also called semitones, and not a mixture of whole and half steps as they naturally occur. We look at the different intervals in one octave now, and so we're basically talking about 12 semitones. I want to show you that with the starting point on the C, but this theory can also be applied to any other note of your choice, of course. So I start with the first interval, and the first interval is the perfect unison. It's from C to C, and the first thing that comes in your mind is, okay, that's an octave, but that's wrong. It's actually in the same octave, so there's no semitone difference. It can be a different tone. For example, when you play it on different strings on your guitar, that has something to do with the, for example, with the pickup settings or something like that. There can be a different tone, but it's actually the same note that you're playing twice. The next thing is the minor second. It's actually from C to C sharp or D flat, and it can sound quite dissonant because it's so near to the root note or to the first note that I actually played the C, and it's one semitone higher than the C. The major second is from the C to D. It also can be sound a bit dissonant because of the nearest to the C, as I said before, because they are from the D is only two semitones higher than the C. After that, it comes the minor third. It's from the C to D sharp or E flat. In the minor third, you know that from chords actually, because the minor third makes the minor chord to a minor chord. Because you got when you want to form a minor chord, you have your root note, then your minor third, and then the fifth, and that is actually important for the forming of chords. And if you have the minor third, you also have the major third. The major third is from C to an E, so the E is actually 4 semitones higher than the C, and the major third helps you to form a major chord. So you got the root note, then the major third, and then your fifth, your perfect fifth. After that, we have the perfect fourth from the C to an F. Those are actually 5 semitones. And after that, we have the augmented fourth, or also called sharp fourth, or also called flat 5. So this is from C to an F sharp or G flat, and the F sharp or G flat are actually 6 semitones higher than the C. After that, we have the perfect fifth that I actually mentioned before with the chords. It's from C to G, and there are actually 7 semitones between it, and many guitarists knows this interval because of the power chords actually. Because when you play a power chord, you play the root note, in this case it is a C, and then the perfect fifth above it, so in this case the G, and that's how you build a power chord. And something, by the way, is that that I can say you that um, in the power chord is no major or minor third, so that makes it to a major or minor chord. So you can play the power chord when you play power chord in C. It can be a power chord for C major, but it also can be played on a C minor. After that, we can go to the minor sixths from the C to a G sharp or an A flat. There are actually 8 semitones, and as we had it with the thirds, so the minor sixth, we have also a major sixth, and this is from C to an A, and after that we have the minor sevenths. Those are actually 10 semitones between it, and it's from C to an A sharp or B flat. And as it was with the sixth, we had that same with the sevenths too. So we have a major seventh, which is actually a C to a B. So those are actually 11 semitones. So the B is 11 semitones higher than the C. And at the very end, we have the perfect octave, or call it, some people call it P8, from C to C, but not as the perfect unison. Now it is not in the same octave, it's one octave above it. So the same note, but one octave higher. So in the whole, we have now the 12 semitones completed, and that's why it's called a perfect octave. Another hint for learning the intervals to hear it. If you want to learn the different intervals, you should always refer to a song or a common or a known melody, because that's a common strategy to remember the different intervals. Yeah, and hear it out of songs or something like that. Now I want to talk about some several scales. I actually mentioned the major and minor scale before, but I think major and minor are very clear, and therefore I think I do not have to explain them again, and how it is possible, for example, to form them. Nevertheless, I just want to mention some important facts about them, just to complete the whole set of scales that I want to give you with this overview. But as I said, I won't explain them from the very, very basics. Okay, first some fundamental things about scales. So major and minor scales, and actually every scale, contain half steps and whole steps in it, and are looped after one octave. Further, it is possible to transpose every scale to every key by adapting notes with flats or sharps to the key you would like. And then we can start with the major scale. So basically every scale, each note is a certain distance apart from the next. So they form a pattern that repeats. And all major scales follow this exact same pattern. It starts with a whole step, after that another whole step, a half step, a whole step, a whole step, another whole step, and at the end a half step again. So between the first two notes in the major scale, so for example when you are in the C major scale, from a C to a D is a whole step, but between the third and fourth notes and seventh and eighth notes in the major scale, there are actually half steps. So those are the two natural occurring half steps in the major scale. So every major scale has got 2 half steps and 5 whole steps in it, as the minor scale. But the difference to the minor scale is that the minor scale also forms a pattern with its intervals either, but the natural occurring half steps are between the second and third, fifth and sixth scale degree. So there are even more relations between the minor and major scales. So every major scale has its minor parallel scale. So for example, when you come back to the example with the C major scale, when you are in the C major scale, your parallel minor scale is the A minor scale. So as always, as we know in the music notation, there's the same structure in every key, so you can apply that configuration to all keys. As I said, the minor parallel scale is always the 3 semitone pitch under the major scale. So we come back to the example. With the C major, you start with the root note of the C major scale is actually the C, and you go 3 semitones under and they are at the A, and that's the root note of your minor scale. So so the parallel minor scale to the C major scale is A minor. But you can apply that the other way around. So the major scale is always a 3 semitone pitch higher or above the minor scale. In addition to the major scale, I would go on with the different modes. And each mode starts on a different scale degree of the major scale. And the first one is the Ionian one. It has got actually the same key as the major scale, so the natural occurring half steps are between the 3rd and 4th, the 7th and 8th scale degree. The next one is the Dorian one, and it starts on the 2nd scale degree of the major scale, and it's actually a natural minor scale with raised 6, and it's natural occurring half steps between the 2nd and 3rd and 6th and 7th scale degree. The next one is the Phrygian one, and it begins on the 3rd scale degree, and it's actually a natural minor scale with a flatted 2nd, so with its natural occurring half steps between the 1st and 2nd and 5th and 6th scale degree. The next one is begins on the 4th scale degree of the major scale, and it's actually called the Lydian one, and it's basically a major scale with a raised 4th, and its natural occurring half steps between the 4th and the 5th and 7th and 8th scale degree. The Mixolydian one is the next one and starts on the 5th scale degree of the major scale. The Mixolydian one is actually a major scale with a flatted 7, and its half steps between the 3rd and 4th and 6th and 7th scale degree. The next one is as the Ionian one, the Aeolian. It starts on the 6th scale degree, and as we here with the Ionian and major scale, the Aeolian one is also known as the natural minor scale. So it has actually the same natural occurring half steps between the 2nd and 3rd and 5th and 6th scale degree. The last one is the Locrian one, and it starts on the 7th scale degree of the major scale, and it's actually a natural minor scale with a flatted 2nd and 5th, with its half steps between the 1st and 2nd and 4th and 5th scale degree. But it's I think rarely used in modern music than the others. In addition to the minor scale, I would go on with the minor harmonic scale and the minor melodic scale. The harmonic scale is a natural minor scale with a raised 6, and the minor melodic scale is ascending with an additional raised 7, so a raised 6 and a raised 7, and descending a natural, basically natural minor scale. The major and minor scale sound a bit academic when used it over a chord progression or something like that. So it's important to learn the pentatonic scale if you want to play a solo to modern music. The pentatonic scale actually contains, as its name implies, 5 tones, which is 2 notes shy of the normal 7 major and minor scales, which creates a more open and less linear sound. Although the pentatonic scale is not the only scale available for playing rock lead, it is actually the most common used and easiest to learn one. So there are basically 2 possibilities to form a pentatonic scale, because you can form a major pentatonic or a minor pentatonic. So first we look at the major pentatonic, and actually the major pentatonic is in the same key to the normal major scale, but you leave out the 4th and the 7th of the scale. So you only need the 1st, the 2nd, the 3rd, the 5th and 6th note of the normal major scale, and then you got your major pentatonic. And actually it is the same with the minor pentatonic. You look at the natural minor scale, and then you only take the 1st one, then a flatted 3rd one, the 4th one, the 5th one, and the flatted 7th one, and then you got your minor pentatonic throughout your natural minor scale, yeah. And you can apply this configuration, of course, to all keys you would like. Another advantage of the pentatonic is that you can't just play it to the corresponding minor or major scale. So you can play it to the parallel major or minor key either. It is also possible to add some other bad notes. We call it bad notes or blues notes. For example, in blues, a very common scale is the minor blues scale, which is actually a normal minor pentatonic with one added tone. So there are not 5 tones, there are actually 6 tones in it. So you added, when you play the third and the fourth in the minor pentatonic, you actually added to the fourth an augmented fourth and then a fifth. So the tone between it, and weep it a little bit, so that you that you create a tone which is near to an augmented fourth, so that you can add one tone to the pentatonic that it sound more dirty, or more opener to the to the chord progression. And another example for adding one tone to the pentatonic is the minor pentatonic at 9th scale. So you just have to add the 9th of the scale, and then you got your minor pentatonic at 9. And there are more and more possibilities to add all the tones to the scales. That it gets another sound, or it gets another tone of it. As I said before, you can move this configuration up and down the neck of the guitar to find the pentatonics in every key you would like. So you just need to know the lowest root note to figure out what key you are in, and then you can start with the root note, of course. So that's actually everything I want to say to the scales. And to get progressive blending to the theme of chords, we can actually add the scaled renames. So actually each note has a function name that matches its function applied to all major or minor scales. So we got on the first scale degree, we got the tonic. On the second, we got the supertonic. On the third, the mediant. The fourth, the subdominant. The fifth, the dominant. The sixth, the submediant. And on the seventh, the leading tone. And this also, you have to remember that when we're talking about chords later, because you can add the major and minor chords from the major and minor scales that you can create with those scales. It is possible that there's a configuration that you always know in which key you can play which chords are possible to play. For example, in a C major key, and you can figure that very quick out. You can figure that out very quick when you hear to that structure or that configuration that is also applied to every key you would like. So now I want to focus on the theme of chords and some fundamental thing about chords. A chord in music is any harmonic set of pitches that consisting of 2 or more, or usually 3 or more notes that are heard as if sounding simultaneously. Most frequently accounted chords are actually triads, because they're often played in modern music, and I will actually focus on that. They consist of 3 distinct notes. You got the root note, the interval of a third, and interval of a fifth. But you can also add one tone to these 3 chords to the triads, and then it's called added tone chords or extended chords, which are actually often used or often played in the jazz or blues music. When you have an order series of chords, you call it a chord progression. So, for example, when you got the 12-bar blues chord progression, which is very common, that's something like that. And I actually want to distinguish between 4 different chords. So you got the major chord, the minor chord, the diminished chord, and the augmented chord. And that are actually the 4 different chord I wanna talk about now. So I start with the major triads, or also called major chords, which I actually build with the major third and a perfect fifth from the root note. And when we write that down in the stuff, you will see that that every note, if the root note is on the one hand on the line, that the other note have to be on the line too in the stuff. But on the other hand, it is like that when the root note isn't on the line, so it is in a gap between the line. The others have to be between the lines too. So that's just something to add for the correct writing. for the correct notation. And yeah, now we talk about the major triads, and then I give an example with the C major chord or a C major triad. So we start at the C with the root note, so C is our root note, and then you have to get 4 semitones up, so 4 half step up. You go from the C to D sharp or E flat, to an D, to an to D sharp or E flat, and then to an E, and then you have 4 steps, and that's your major third. So that's so the E is your major third. So you got from C to E, and then you have to go back to the C and count 7 semitones up, and then when you do that, you actually placed on the G, and then you got your triad already. You got your C major chord, and it's C, E, and G. So that's first to the major triads. So next I want to focus on the minor triads or minor chords, which I actually build with, in contrast to the major chord, with the minor third and not the major third, but also with the perfect fifth from the root note. So let's build a minor triad. I go back to the example with the C, but now I will build a C minor chord and not a C major chord. That you can see, but you see the difference between the major and minor chords. So now we start again with the root note with the C, and then you have to count 3 half steps of 3 semitones up to the next tone that you got actually your minor third interval. So you count from the C, C sharp or D flat, D, and after that go to the D sharp or E flat. But how can you know which tone do you need now? And that's what I said actually before, that you have to count on the you have to write that down in the staff, and you have to look, is it on the line or is it in a gap? So the first, when you go from the C is on the first ledger line actually in the stuff. So you know the other notes have to be on a line. So you can see you go from the C to a D, and it can't be in D sharp. It have to be in E flat, because the D sharp isn't on the line, but the E flat is. So you have to take the E flat. So you go from the C to an E flat, and then go back to the C to the root note, and then count again 7 steps. So 7 half tones, 7 half steps to to the perfect fifth, and this is actually G as it was in the major chord. So now we got our C minor triad, and it's actually C and then E flat, because again it's on the line and not in the gap. You have to choose E flat and not D sharp. So you got C, E flat, and then G, and then you got your minor triad. So there are actually 2 more chords now. I want to focus now on the augmented triads, the augmented chords, which I actually built with a major third and an augmented fifth, and not as it was with the minor and major chords, a perfect fifth. So now it is an augmented fifth. So let's build an augmented triad. You have to write that down in this. You have to write it down in the staff again and look if it's on a line or in the gap, and then you count again the half steps. So we go again from the C, and now you have to count 4 half steps. So again a major third, as it was with the major chords. Actually, you have to count from the C 4 half steps, and then you again on the E, and now go back to the root note, and then count not 7 steps as it was the last time. You have to count now 8 steps, because it's not the perfect fifth, it's the augmented fifth. So now you count 8 steps or 8 half steps or 8 semitones, and then you are not on the G, you're on the G sharp. And actually you remember that when you write it down in the stuff, it has to be G sharp because it's on the line, and not as the it can't be the A flat, because that is one above in the gap and not on the line. Yeah, and that's how you build an augmented triad. The last triad I want to talk about is actually the diminished triad, which is built with a minor third, and not as it was with the major or minor or augmented chords. Not a perfect fifth, not an augmented fifth. Now it is a diminished fifth. So that's actually what it makes to the diminished chord. So let's build the diminished chord. We go back again to the example with the C. So we're starting again with the root note on C, and then we have to go, as I said, a minor third up, so 3 half steps up to an E flat. So we add an E flat, and then we go back to the C, and then we have to count 6 half steps, not 7. We have to count 6 half steps up. So that we so diminished fifth interval actually, and then we are at the G flat. So we got our diminished triad. So we got C, E flat, and G flat, and that's how we build a diminished triad. So now we talked about the scale degree names again. We heard now something about the about chords and how they're formed with the with scales, and how you can form the chords out of the scales, the different ones, and yeah, now we talk about the scale degree names and how they correspond to the chords, to the different ones. And I show you a configuration or a structure where you can show where it's very quick to see which chord which chord progression, when you want to write a chord progression or something like that in, for example, a C major, which chord can you use for this chord progression that it sounds very good. So we first look at the tonic. So it's the first scale degree, and actually we look first at the major scale. So we started with the example, as I said, the C major. So the tonic is in the C major, so it's a C major chord. You can play C major chords. It's in C, E, and G. So from the C to an E, it's in major third. So that's a major chord, of course. So we go to the second, and that's the supertonic, and it's always in every. It's the same in every major scale, that the supertonic chord is always in minor, because when we go back to the example with the D, we got a D, an F, and a B, and from the D to an F, it's actually a minor third, so we got a minor chord. It's the same with the mediant. It's always a minor chord in the major scale. So we come back to the C major example, and then we see the mediant is actually C, D, E. So we are at an E, and we go to this from the E to G to B, and then we are at the then we got from the E to G, and that's actually a minor third too, as it was with the supertonic. So we got another minor chord. The subdominant is often used in chord progressions with, for example, in blues or something like that, with the tonic and the dominant together. And it's actually also a major chord, because the subdominant in our example is an F, and the chord is major because we go from the F, an interval of a major third, to the A, and another interval to the fifth, and that's actually a major chord. And the subdominant is a major chord either, because they are also we start at the G, and from the G to the B is actually also a major third, and then it's a major chord. From the sixth, from the subdominant, so in our example is that the A, and we started on an A, and then we go from the A to a C, and after that to the so an interval of a minor third, and after that from the C to an E, and that's actually to the fifth. So we got a minor chord because of the minor third, and so the submediant in the major scale is always a minor chord. So you can form only a minor chord. And with the seventh, it's a bit difficult, because with the leading tone, you can form as in our example it was in B, and you can form a diminished chord, because when you go from the B to an E, it's actually a minor third, and then go another to the fifth, and there's actually between the minor third and the fifth, So from the D to the F is also a minor third, so a little, um, yeah, a little interval, and then you got two of them, two of the little intervals, and then it's yeah, it's called the minor chord. So by definition, the circle of fifth is a visual tool designed to illustrate the relationship between the 12 semitones of the chromatic scale, and actually the circle of fifth is the foundation of the Western music, with chord progression and all that stuff. But I'll talk to that later, and first concentrate on the fundamental things of the circle of fifth. So the name derives from the fact that going clockwise around the circle, each note is a perfect fifth above the previous note in the circle. Starting with the note on C at 12 o'clock, and then moving clockwise around the circle, each note is a perfect fifth above the previous one, as I said. So a perfect fifth means 7 semitones. The letter around the circles aren't just note names. They also represent the corresponding key of each note, of course, and therefore we're starting with the accidental free key of C major at the top, as I said, at 12 o'clock, and working our way around the keys with of course accidentals in there. So another thing that you can handle with the circle of fifth is that you can figure out the key signature actually. The middle C is the very top because C major has no flats or sharps, so no accidentals in it, and it's almost like a neutral key. And when you head clockwise around the circle, starting at the C major, you go to the G major, and it has one sharp, the F sharp, and going second step to the D major, and it has two sharps actually, the F sharp and the C sharp. Soon you will notice that the sharps are added in the order of F, C, G, A, E, B. And when you head counterclockwise around the circle, starting at C major, you'll see that the flats are added in the reverse order. So B, E, A, D, G, C, F. And that another thing that makes your life easier, the number of steps you take around the circle tells you how many accidentals you actually got. So when you want to go, for example, when you want to know how many accidentals the A major scale have, you go again from the C, and then to G is 1, to the D is 2 accidentals, and then you're at the A major scale, to the A major key, and actually you got, and actually then you know you got 3 accidentals or 3 sharps. So let's work through an example of how to find a key signature actually. So you're playing a song that is in F major, for example, and you want to know which sharps or flats do you have to use. So you go back again to the C, to the very top, to the neutral key, without any accidentals, and then move counterclockwise once. You're a perfect fifth below C is actually the F, and that's what we're searching about. And F has actually, when you go one step counterclockwise, you know that F has one flat. So recall the F, C, G, D, A, E, B sequence backwards, because now we're talking about flats, not sharps, actually. And you'll see that the F major's key signature consists the B flat. So you got the one flat is the B flat in the F major sharp, F major key. So the letter sequence F, C, G, D, A, E, B may end up confusing you if you look at the circle and realize there's no E sharp or B sharp anywhere in the key signatures. And you're absolutely right. The E sharp would be an F minor, and the B sharp would be a C. The E sharp would be a F major, of course, and the B sharp would be the C major. You count sharps from G, so once we've got to 7, it actually becomes more easy to think of scales in terms of flats, because then there will be fewer accidentals, of course. So there's where the concept of the enharmonic equivalence comes in. So until now I've only talked about the major scales or the major key in the circle of fifth, but you would say, oh, what's about the minor key? So you don't have to build actually a new circle of fifth for only the minor key, you can actually integrate them in the circle of fifth with the major key that we already got. So that's why, because the relative minor of a key has the same key signature and therefore all the same notes as the major ones. So there are two ways to quickly find the relative minor or major key. The first one is the relative minor tonic will be on the 6th degree of the scale. So when you look at for example, the C major scale or the C major key, you're starting at this at the tonic, so it's actually a C, and then go to the 6th scale degree, and that's actually an A. So you know the C major, the parallel minor key is actually A minor. Another thing or another way is that you're using the circle of fifth actually. So simply move 3 positions clockwise around to find the relative minor. So again, we started at the C, so the C major, we are in the C major key, and you're searching for the minor key actually. So you go 3 positions clockwise in the circle of fifth. So starting at the C, go to the G, 1, to the D, 2, and actually on the 3rd position is the A. So we got, actually, as it was with the first way, we actually got the A minor too. So the A minor is the is the parallel minor key to C major. Also, you can build that the other way around. So you have to go 3 positions counterclockwise around to find actually the relative major. So when you add the for example, the A minor scale, and then you have to go 3 steps counterclockwise. So you go to the A minor, and then again D, G, and then you are at the C again. And you know the A minor, the parallel major scale or key is C major. So that's just another way to do it. So basically we're near at the end, and now I want to talk about the major and minor chords. And the major chord consists actually out of 3 notes that we mentioned before: the tonic, the a major third above the tonic, and a perfect fifth above the tonic. So the major third interval is found simply by counting these 4 semitones for the major third interval. So you actually count from when you're starting, for example, again for a C major chord, and then you're starting at the C, and you count 4 semitones, you are at the E. And the perfect fifth is actually very easy to find, because the circle of fifth is actually throughout. So every step is throughout of perfect fifths. So as you see on this picture, the perfect fifth is actually direct 1 step clockwise right next to the root, and as you see, it builds a triangle throughout the triad. You can rotate this shape around the circle and instantly find any other or any major chord you would like. And a minor chord is actually the same. So say for a minor chord the third above the tonic instead of the major third, and find the fifth is the same way as I actually said before. So right next, so 1 step clockwise next to the root note is actually the perfect fifth. And count up 3 semitones for the tonic to have the minor third interval. And you have to count up 3 semitones for the tonic to determine your third, and then you already got your minor note. You can use the circle of fifth also for songwriting, as I said, or for chord progression. So that is the last thing I want to talk about. If you give, I want to give an examples for that. So if you want to play a normal 12-bar blues chord progression that we actually mentioned before, you need the tonic, a subdominant, and the dominant chord for it. So when you look at the circle of fifth for a root note, so for example the C, and then you got already your subdominant on the left side and the dominant on the right side. I showed for you on this picture. And for example, when you go again from the C major and you want to find in 1 second the subdominant and the dominant, you only have to go to the left and to the right, so 1 step clockwise and 1 step counterclockwise. to have your subdominant and dominant. So when you go from the C, one step counterclockwise, you have your subdominant. It's actually your F. So the F major chord is then actually your subdominant chord to the tonic chord, which is actually in C major. And you need also the dominant chord, so that's actually one step clockwise, so in the other way around. And there you have the G major chord. So that's your dominant chord for the for the tonic chord C major, and then you already got your three important chords for this for the 12 bar blues chord progression, and then you have it already. And that's so you can also use the circle of fifth not only for the for the scales and for the keys, so you can use it you can also use it for the chord progression and songwriting actually.